an aggressive sport, right? Football, like he had a concussion last year. I mean, he has concussions pretty much. I mean, we don't talk about it, but he does have concussions. And I don't really think it's a healthy thing for your body to go through like through that kind of aggression, like all the time. That could not be healthy for you, right? And I'm planning on having him be healthy and do a lot of fun things when we're like 100, I hope.
So those comments prompted some discussion, some concern, and then Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee, tells ESPN his client was not diagnosed with a concussion. He said Tom was not diagnosed with a concussion last year. Many of the protocols and safeguards are still evolving, and it's obviously a good thing the organization and everyone close to him is vigilant and always looking out for his health. Drew Brees now weighs in on concussions.
If you come home from a game and you might be dinged or your bell rung, would you tell your wife?
No, I wouldn't want her to worry. I guess I've had one documented concussion, and that was back in 2004, the 2004 season when I was playing for the Chargers. I obviously remember the event, the hit, and everything, and I knew that something was not right, and I knew that I was concussed. But I didn't take myself out of the game. I stayed in the game and played as long as I could until finally a coach pulled me aside and was like, I'm looking out for you here, and you're not going to play anymore because I know something's not right. But if it wasn't for him, I wasn't pulling myself out of the game. And that's why it's hard to change that mentality for guys.
Well, the aforementioned Calvin Johnson also joined the discussion. He said guys get concussions. They don't tell the coaches it happens. I don't tell the coach sometimes because I know I got a job to do. The team needs me out there on the field, and sometimes you allow that to jeopardize yourself, but that's just the nature of the world. Some players have self-reported, including Ben Roethlisberger, who told this to Peter King in 2016 about self-reporting concussions.
I'm proud of it. I've been just like Drew, where I haven't reported things before either. Probably everybody that's ever played the game of football hasn't reported an injury. And for me, it wasn't about an injury. I've played through many injuries. But when you talk about your head, that's a different ballgame. You can replace a lot of body parts. You can't replace a brain. I'm thinking about my family and long term. And, yeah, I love this game. I love my brothers that I play football with. And I would encourage any player that has an issue with their brain to just report it properly.
Well, there's a reason that Gisele's comments got so much attention, and it's a good reason, because this is a serious issue. This is about long-term health and the league and players doing everything they can to change a culture. Having said that, Teddy, has the culture changed? Is it still taboo to raise your hand and say, I need to come out of this game?
It depends. It depends on what type of concussion it is. And as the more awareness goes out there, you see in terms of getting your bell rung, in terms of just sort of being woozy or loss of consciousness for a split second, those starting to be known as mild concussions. That's a concussive state. If you were to just get your bell rung and you were to come out of the game and say, I think I just got a concussion out there, I want to get checked out, that's something that's going to be frowned upon, in my opinion. If you report it, it better be a good one, because these guys can tell you, we go out there, you get your bell rung, you feel a little woozy, but you know you got 40 seconds or 30 seconds to get right. And if you're right in the time where you can get the next play, you continue to play. If every player did that when they got their bell rung and came out of the game and said, I'm reporting a concussion right now, there would be a lot of players coming out of the game.
Without question. That's a problem, though, Jeff. Where do you draw that line? It is such a slippery slope.
Yeah, and I think we're making progress. I mean, the good thing is we are having these discussions, and we are moving in the right direction, but we are nowhere near where we need to be as a game, as players. Again, I think if you look at the generation that Teddy and I and Lewis all played in, there's definitely a different mentality. The Drew Breeses, Tom Brady, you're talking about those, and even Roethlisberger, but it seems he's caught it before everybody else. But the younger generation that have had it through high school, the concussion awareness through college, and now they're entering the league, I think they're much more apt to self-report because they do see the long-term effects of what it is. Now, to Teddy's point, I also think it's position-specific, or really your placement on the roster has a lot to do with it. If you're the bottom 45 to 53 guys, it's going to be hard to tell if you're a special teams guy to come over to special teams, hey, coach, I can't run down on kicks anymore. That's the part of the game that becomes difficult, especially when you're talking about if you bring bring yourself out, you're leaving someone else to pick up your role. You only have so many guys who can dress on Sunday, so numbers are limited. All of those things come into play and come to so it is hard. And when you're being paid the type of money that we are, it is tough to take yourself out and to self-report. However, that being said, when you're talking about what Roethlisberger said, long-term injury effect of these concussions and how prevalent they are becoming, it is difficult to look at a guy and say, hey, man, hide it. Because if you do, you have no idea what the ramifications are forever. And for 2 or 3 years as opposed to 30 or 40, it's very short-sighted to have that thought process.
Lewis, you know better, all of you know better than I do about the judgment, if you will. You know, you're sort of the players that say, why is that guy coming out? Is he lazy? Is he weak? So what we are learning about the long-term effects of concussions and how serious they are, is that changing that judgment? Is that because that's what I would think has to happen before we're going to see real progress?
Yeah, I think it is, Wendy. I just think that this is something that's going to you're going to have to exercise some patience with, because you're trying to unwind a mentality that has existed for a very long time with athletes, as far as look, show no weakness, don't ever give up until they have to drag you off the football field. That's hard to just, kind of educate out of someone overnight like that. And I think another one of the great points that Jeff just made, and we talked about this earlier today, is the fact that it's not going to be uniform across the NFL, across all players, because all players look at their job security and look at their position in the National Football League much differently.
Right.
Look, it is different, right?
I mean, they look at it because because it is. Let's be honest about it. There's a reason why guys get fined for falling asleep and guys get cut for falling asleep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a reason why if Drew Brees takes himself out of a football game and didn't play half a year, he's going to get his money. He's going to go back and play the next year and the next year and the next year. Whereas other guys, they miss one snap and another guy makes a good play in his place, he may get replaced. I've been through that. I've been through that with different injuries, not with concussions, but I felt the pressure to just practice, let alone play.
That's right.
Practice. Get on the football field, Allen Iverson, and practice. That's what I'm talking. So it's a lot different for different players. So it's something that's going to continue to evolve. You're going to have to remain patient with it. It's not going to be perfected overnight.
You mentioned awareness, Wendy. And I think that overall our awareness is rising about the importance and the long-term impact of concussions. But I think there's two different types of awareness that we have to be conscious of. One is in-game awareness, and you guys can all speak to it, having played in the NFL for a long time. It's difficult to pull yourself out of the game. You're not necessarily thinking about some of the long-term ramifications and impacts of whatever you might be dealing with in the moment. And it's not just concussions. It could be a stinger. It could be potential ligament damage in one of your knees, etc. But I think there is more awareness that you see players like, for example, a couple of years ago, Chris Borland walking away after one successful season in the NFL. So it feels like their awareness is in-moment awareness, and then maybe when you have the chance to reflect on a bigger picture level, talk to your family, your friends, your loved ones, then I think we can say that there are two different conversations that are being had.
Let me say this about the other part that always gets overlooked, because I hear people on our network and everywhere else, they bash the CBA and the way that we've designed practice schedules. But to Lewis's point, we have tried to alleviate, because when we were playing, you would hit Wednesday, Thursday, and sometimes Friday. Now you get one shot, and as you get to the latter end of the season, there is no more hitting. So we are trying to give
concussions
people,
would happen in practice also,
because you get a concussion on Sunday, you practice on Wednesday. Now you're getting secondary concussion syndrome, all those different things. There are a lot of things in place that will help our guys if they will use the things that are put in. And it gets bashed, and it's ridiculous, because on-the-field product should never trump our health and safety.
And I think the one thing I want to say, too, that everyone just needs to know this, even parents with their kids playing. Football's a dangerous sport.
Right.
It's a dangerous sport with a lot of violent collisions. And right now, we're talking about pro football.
Exactly.
We're talking about pro football, where those guys, all of us that are playing out there, it's all we got. Right? There isn't some Ivy League degree that I could have fell back on, and all of a sudden I'm a lawyer.
Right.
And a lot of these players are in this position to where this is all they got. This is the goal that they had ever since they were growing up. So I'm going to do everything I possibly can to do what I can to provide for my family. And if that means
they will
sacrifice.
They will willingly take the risk.
So Teddy and Jeff and Field, you referenced reflecting. You've had time now to reflect. Having said all of that, would you go back? Are there situations where you would have taken yourself out of a game?
There isn't.
There is not.
Like, hey, I remember one of my very first preseason games, hitting a guy so hard where I literally didn't know what stadium. I forgot the team we were playing against. Had to ask every single snap.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Where am I going?
And played one of my best games. Maybe that's a sign. But you know what? But that's and you know what? Would I change that? No, because you know what? Sometimes, guys look at that almost like a badge of honor. I continue to fight.
Well, and that's
I
the
continue
culture
to go.
we're talking
And you know
about.
exactly. That's what you have to unwind. And that is something that's going to take time.
It will take
and I think we got to change. I mean, just the term concussion versus visible concussion. The visible concussion where a guy's staggering, a guy's knocked out on the ground, those visible concussions, those are the one you got to probably take yourself out of the game for.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not asking anyone here to talk about Tom Brady's health, which we do not know. Is it at least plausible, though, that there was some kind of issue and he kept it to himself?
100%. I mean,
everybody could be telling the truth.
Everybody who's ever played knows we tell our spouse much more than we tell any trainer, anybody, and they can see things. Our kids can see it, our wives can see it long before our staff, our training staff. I can avoid the training.